I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Danielle, would you please proceed with a roll call?
Jeff Francine,
Present.
Neil Loughlin is excused. David Newbill,
Present.
Jenny McKay,
Present.
Jim Christopher,
Here.
Lynn Shay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. First, next item on the agenda, the approval of minutes from the last Planning Commission meeting held January 25th, 22.
I make the motion, we approve the approval of the minutes from January 25th, 2022.
And I'll second that motion.
So we have a motion pending approval for acceptance of the Planning Commission meetings or minutes from the meeting held January 25, 2022. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda would be the review and approval of today's agenda. Hopefully all of the commission members had a chance to review that. At this time, I would entertain a motion for approval.
I make a motion, we approve tonight's agenda for February 22.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion pending approval for approval of today's agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion approved. Thank you. Next item would be communications and notices. First item on that bullet point for the agenda would be MTA training on demand. Danielle.
I just want to let everyone know that we do have MTA, Michigan Township Association. Teresa's told me we do have a premium pass, so we get a lot of free training or very discounted training. They'd like us to utilize that. If anybody wants a refresher, Jeff is taking like 3 classes this month. I've got signed up for a couple as well. If you want to, let me know. I have to get you set up at the MTA with your password and such, and we can get you registered at classes.
Are there any after tax season when I have
Oh,
some
there's
breathing?
all, yes.
Okay, let me know after February 15th.
Sure. If
April.
there's not with the MTA, Michelle is a fan of the what's that?
Michigan Association of Planning.
Yes, which
Okay.
I've taken those classes too, and they're great. So
I've taken some long time ago.
Yeah. So a refresher is always good.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
If anyone's interested, let me know.
There's one in March I'd like to go.
Okay.
Nick, that's offered on the 16th. Up in
Okay.
Frankenmuth,
Okay.
planning essentials or something like that.
And I guess I would just ask, I was enrolled, Danielle helped me enroll through the MTA website or,
Yeah, it's the Michigan Township Association website, and I called and said, hey, this is our new chairman, and here's his email address. It's obviously your own personal email address, and then.
but there are a lot of training opportunities available through that site. Do all the commission members have access to that?
If you want to have access, you just gotta let me know and I'll call her and get you guys set up on your email that I send your packets and stuff to.
Thank you.
I guess the next item would be the Renaissance Festival letter that was included in the packet of materials that was sent around to the commission earlier, or I guess about a week ago. The letter that was sent on our collective behalf, I guess, fairly reflects what was discussed and agreed at our last meeting back in January. I guess I'll just say at this point in time, I've not had any substantive discussion from Kathy or anyone at the on behalf of the festival. So,
She's not called.
no, sir. But it's only been, it's been a week.
If I can, Mr. Chair, just so you know, I have been very concerned because she didn't have anybody at the last meeting. And I'm concerned over the extent of what they have to do, so that they need time to get it done, because things like getting those signs made takes a long time through the road commission. And a lot of the other stuff, I think, like putting the extra entry points in, it's gonna take some time after the design phase is done. So I did have lunch with George and Karen, that's the supervisor and the clerk from Holly, last week, and said I was really concerned about this and emphasized that I think we need to make sure collectively your board and theirs get together and make sure that Kathy understands all of the things that need to be done. And I was concerned because she hasn't been at the meetings. Apparently she's, I believe, still in Florida, because the owner of the festival has 4 of them. This is the biggest one. Kathy takes care of at least this one and the one in Florida. And there's some kind of litigation about somebody that tripped on some property they rented over a piece of PVC pipe from the electrical company that's on municipal property, and somehow they got dragged into the suit, I guess. Be that as it may, I said, I think you're gonna have to have somebody sitting in at this meeting. So the good thing is both George and Karen were very receptive when we met, and said that, yeah, they think we should be doing this together. Because I said, unless both of you, that's us and Holly, agree to either approve or deny it, I think it's not going to carry much emphasis. So I just wanted you to know I had that meeting. All of the discussions at that meeting were positive. And I think I told Kathy the last time I talked to her on the phone and she was in Florida, I'm pretty sure I suggested that she should give you a call so she could go over some of this. I'm a little disappointed that nobody called me. I just wanted to make you aware of what transpired in this office.
Thanks, Bob. I do appreciate it. And I think the joint, approach, as we discussed it in January, would be, extremely beneficial for our purposes. So, thank you for having, that contact. I didn't put my phone number just to, okay, so if maybe she doesn't know how to reach me, I'd be happy to speak with her. As it relates to the point you make about, the timing element and just having sufficient time to complete what was laid out in the letter. As I was, going through the minutes and reviewing what we approved, the items that are set out are, they're fairly self-explanatory, and they will take time because they're not, there's third-party approvals involved. And so obviously she is aware of that. I'm sure the festival authorities are aware of that. So presumably the letter will have some effect, hopefully very soon.
I can let you know that I also happened to have a discussion with Wally Food, who owns the haunted house across the street from them. And he happened to be in the office when we were doing something on this, and he started chit chatting with me and said, we had some of the same problems. As I said, every 3 or 4 years we have a blowout weekend, or 3 weekends, 3 or 4. But even when it works good, those last ones are pretty heavy and intensive traffic and parking and stuff. And he said, yeah, I had the same thing in the haunted house. So this is what he did. I thought it was very simple and quite creative. He said, my September turnout was usually pretty light at the haunted house. October is like gangbusters, and I'm open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Thursday and Sunday are always lighter, and Friday and Saturday is always much heavier. So he said, I just reduced the rates in September and raised the rates in October. And if you come in on a Thursday or a Sunday, the tickets are cheaper than they are on Friday or Saturday, and smooth my traffic out. And it's
Neat.
I only mentioned that because I thought, that seems like a pretty simple fix. To
Yeah.
me, and it's kind of along the lines we've said. The problem is some of those weekends are consistently heavy because they don't want to date stamp the tickets, but there's ways to drive that behavior. And so I passed that on because when Wally thought about it, I thought, I gotta let somebody know that's a good idea. So I just wanted to let you
Yeah.
know that also transpires.
I think the problem is though, and maybe I speak for all of us when I say the concern is that, this assumes a worst case scenario and we don't want to replicate history with regard to what happened. So, if everything this year is different from last, just circumstantially wise, the pandemic's lessening and people are more adept to being out. So it's not such a rush of, crowds to
But
the
I think what you'll
festival.
have is, I'll bet they will have a record turnout this year.
So which heightens,
COVID's gone, I'll bet you they're gonna hit way over anything they've had before.
well, then logic would dictate the vital importance of, kind of reading and responding appropriately. So is there any other comments? on
Yeah.
that?
When I checked with Holly, they said they weren't going to have a planning commission until March. And, I was ready to go. I know everybody was ready to go. If we wait till March, and it is the first of the month in March, not the end of the month, but
Again, I hate to say this because I'm not trying to duck it. I don't have any jurisdiction.
I know.
over Raleigh. I asked if they could get together first, but they do it a little bit differently than we do here. Here, normal site plan or special use permit comes to the planning commission. You determine the criteria, and that becomes part of the rules for it. In Holly, Karen Winchester's actually acts as, I think, the zoning administrator there. So she would solicit the input from the consultants on what they wanted done on their permit and then give it to them. And I know for the things they've done, it's probably worked in the past. For example, they go to their fire marshal and he determines when they had to run all the extra piping inside by the food concessions for fire suppression and all that stuff, and gives that list to Karen, and she makes that part of their requirement. The best thing I think is that they're willing to do, they seem to be readily willing to do a permit based on cumulatively what both of us think. I would have thought their planning commission might want to be in on it. I know Jim and I have incidentally had a couple of conversations with Pam, who is, originally from our township in Holly, and on their planning commission, but I'm not in a position to be able to say that they have to have that meeting. If you feel that that's something that's beneficial and you want to contact them, my suggestion would be Karen Winchester is really kind of the point on it in Holly for those kinds of discussions.
call her.
You can.
Bob,
That's who I called to have the lunch. Okay.
and what's her official?
She's the township clerk. She's their patty back, only the duties are somewhat different the way they have them structured there.
So she's the clerk.
Yeah, township clerk. She's been there about 20 years.
And
But
then-
she was very positive and supportive and 2-hour lunch.
Jim, are you still interested in going? And
Yeah.
okay,
I have a question for perhaps just Bob on this. By any chance have we been lucky enough to receive payment from the Renaissance Festival?
Ironically, it came in the day your letter went out.
So that's-
good job, good timing.
So that's approximate $30,000.
I think it's 21 something for the festival, or 22, I can't remember. And the other money had come in a little earlier for the site plan. So it must have been in the air,
They must, I was gonna say, they must have heard it was coming. Wonderful.
but
Okay,
it has been paid.
that's good news.
That is good.
And I've talked to Chief about it going forward, because I don't think it's appropriate to have our fire department put out 20-some grand to get a bunch of people to come in to do the service, and then in some cases, wait till the next year to get paid.
Mhm.
And again, I don't normally see that stuff until somebody says, we didn't get paid for this.
Yeah. All right, any other comments or questions on the letter directed to the Renaissance Festival? Okay, thank you. Moving along, there is no public hearing to be conducted tonight. Old business. Subpart A to item 10 on the agenda. Dixie overlay map, Michelle.
Yes, so This issue came up, and I'm glad that Wayne is here tonight because these two are tied, 10A and we'll get to 11B. In the Dixie Highway overlay, the design standards that we developed, there is a map that shows the boundaries of the overlay. And there is an area there on that was not originally included, but was approved, that covers Big Sky Drive, which is a half a dozen or so industrial parcels. And then, you know, Dwayne came to us with this idea, and it had us thinking that perhaps the industrial parcels are not necessarily like appropriate to put under the Dixie Highway. They don't actually touch Dixie Highway. They've already been zoned industrial. That kind of cul-de-sac or that little area is the only real industrial area that we have in the community. So what I brought for you both today is to see the original map and then the one that was approved, and a discussion about if we should go back to the original one so that we can remove the industrial parcels from the overlay, just to kind of spare industrial properties from having to meet standards that were really meant to apply to properties that are highly visible along Dixie Highway. So if you look at your maps, you can see the first one here where it says overlays on the top. That little area was not included. Can you guys identify Big Sky? It's right
Yes.
here on the border. See, it was originally left out here.
This little L shape. This is the I-2 and the I-1.
And then those areas were included in the map that was approved when we held the last public hearing. So the discussion tonight will be whether we should remove or keep them. And then if we are to make any changes at all to this map, we need to have another public hearing. Which we will hold in March.
Which we would have had to have a public hearing next, right?
Well, I mean, it had already been approved at the last public hearing, or sorry, recommended to the trustees who would do the final approval. But we're stopping it before it goes to the trustees to have this conversation here about the boundaries. And then if we want to change those boundaries, we'll hold another public hearing in March, and then it will go to the trustees.
If I can comment on that, what kind of prompted some of this is the overlay district in itself had an additional requirement that frankly I didn't recall or pay attention to, that said you can't have any outside storage on it.
Right.
And industrial zoning is the only type we have that has any storage, and we have very little in the township. So on the one map you have that you see that's like this, that's the Big Sky part that Michelle was just talking about. This area down here is the non-key frontage on the front of Grange Hall Road and I-75, which would likely be either I-1 or I-2 zoning as well. And what happens is almost everybody that looks at that, including one of the potential candidates that Jim and I have been talking to about being the first participant inside the park, other than the municipality, all have a need for some kind of outside storage. So if we don't allow these two areas here in our township, we pretty much have no place you can do it. And I think it would be extremely restrictive to try and develop this. If you think about the portion down here that I marked in black, if we don't have that there, imagine somebody that wants to do some sort of a test and tune garage, Jeep, Ford, Can-Am, whoever, and then we tell them you can't keep anything that you have outside. I just think the two are not going to mix, and I don't envision all of this becoming retail, that's for sure. I do envision the key frontage on I-75 and on Grange Hall Road being retail to support the recreational activities, and important to have the overlay look that we're talking about. But once you get back inside the industrial park, I just don't see where that works to our advantage or anybody that might be a tenant in there.
Nobody we'll be able to see the outside storage. is that correct?
Yeah, well, most of it is gonna be behind whatever the face is on the front, right? Yeah, and actually the elevation on the road is higher, you know, if you've gone out to the property, you drop down 50 to 70 feet, depending where you are, to get into that back part where we would have industrial use. And I just think those are the two areas we have to have someplace that they can do it. And I certainly wouldn't want us to be limited on not being able to get this park developed, because I can tell you with some of the discussions I've had today, that I think once we move the state police and the fire department over there and actually put together the promotional material that Jim and I have been talking about for this property, I think that this is gonna go like wildfire, that piece, I really do. We have enough people that I have dealt with since the ORV park started, and that have the right contacts, that I think we will be able to sell this park out pretty darn quick.
My fear is, you know, you're gonna get junker. Can we make some kind of a stipulation? They can't just, you know, well, we'll just throw this in this pile, and this pile, and the pile gets this high.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna be looking at, one of the reasons in the discussions I had with Will on the property, one of the reasons I've been pushing the idea of preferring, if possible, on all of those parcels, not to actually sell them. I want the long-term land lease them. And any of the developers I've talked to in the meantime are comfortable with it, because if you kind of think about it, how many shopping centers are over 50 years old, right? I mean, they just don't make it that long. And so we would prefer to land lease it for a couple of reasons. It gives us a significantly stronger ability to put terms and conditions in a lease than if we just said, the zoning is this. Somebody could literally say, well, I qualify for that zoning, so I'm going to do it. Where if you're land leasing it, you can put a lot of restrictions in there. And it's not just the zoning then. And that just confirmed to me the previous discussions I've had with Will, why I would prefer to do that. And from our case, you know, we don't want money in one lump sum.
Right.
The whole history of what happens in the state of Michigan. Curl your socks, but if we can land lease it, we have predictable sources of revenue, and that can do two things. It can allow the township to continue to make improvements over time because we have a sustained revenue system, and the tax base on the new buildings will help the fire department meet its requirements. You know, I mean, the last years the fire department's done a good job of bringing their costs down, but there's also been a lot of one-time dollars put in on 3 or 4 different occasions that are pretty hefty. And so at some point in time, we gotta have them self-sustaining.
How long would the leases be?
Well.
10 years, 20 years?
Oh, I think 20 is sure. They're probably 30 to 50-year leases.
Ooh.
And only,
Land only.
someone erects the building on your land.
Yep. That's actually how the task force one building is.
Yeah, so you.
That's exactly what we did.
There's a revenue stream and monetization here. I mean, it really sounds.
Most of the developers appreciate it because they realize, well, this is a big hunk of money. I don't have to put out on land,
but
right?
Abide by the rules.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how we did the task force one building. That's how we were proving concept. That property was built by Barry when it's
Right.
on our land and we own the land permanently.
So Bob, can I ask a question? So this parcel you like removed
Yeah.
from, so should we discuss any of these other parcels though that are not touching Dixie Highway? Is there a particular reason
No.
why we want any of these?
No, most of those, I think the frontage probably would be developed just like it would be on Grange Hall Road. The only reason I put that in there is the back part of it where the industrial buildings are gonna go. We need to have some kind of outside storage, and I think we can manage that through the terms with them.
So not have that in the overlay?
That's why I did the black box when I do it, yeah.
But in addition to this parcel, I mean, are these other ones worth removing? That aren't touching Dixie Highway? So
Back here?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so, because really, mostly what's gonna happen, you'd have to see this, but most of this stuff on Grange Hall here either is built or new builds on it, I think would still require because they face Grange Hall Road. And we want the same kind of appearance that we're looking for in the Dixie overlay district. Even if you come back over here, a lot of these parcels, it's only the front part of it that's really going to be building. That 40 acres that the township owns on the other side of Dead Man's Curve there, you know, where the road goes around, there's only a top part of it that's going to be able to be used for retail. The rest of that, when those 4 or 5 million tons of sand come out of there, are going to be down by the elevation of Kurt's Lake. And there'll be something else in there. It won't be an industrial warehouse because there's a lake in it. So it'll be subdivision or some retail or recreational or something like that. So I think the rest of those are okay the way they are.
And I guess just for my understanding, so the overlays, the schematics, Michelle, the overlays was what existed before approval of the Dixie Highway overlay.
No, it never existed. Those are just two
It's all-
series of. Like, we just started with one map and then expanded the boundaries, and I'm just trying to show you guys the two boundaries that we just discussed. So that first one never existed. It was just our first conception of what the boundaries could be.
And all we're pulling out of that is 2 areas where we know there's going to be industrial applications to allow for some outside storage.
Okay. And the 2 areas being
The white
carve
block,
outs on here, the
white
white
block,
block.
and then that
and then-
outlined black area. Yep. That's
Okay.
the only places I think we need.
And I can attest to my property that, well, after 5 years of owning it, it's shame on me for not realizing that there was an overlay.
And could you identify yourself?
Oh, this is Dwayne Lobestall.
Okay,
My apologies.
well, thank you, Dwayne.
Yeah.
So there doesn't need to be a major decision tonight because the public hearing will be next month, but I wanted to bring to your attention that that's what would be, that's the modification that we would be approving to amend the Dixie Highway overlay. And we would keep the requirement that outdoor storage is prohibited and then remove these properties, so that could be. And just in case you were concerned about storage, there are regulations in place that it has to be screened, it has to be in the rear of the property. And we are going through the zoning ordinance right now, so as we update that, if we want them to be even stronger, we can make them stronger. But for the moment, they do have to be in the rear. And these properties, at least along Big Sky, and that's Holdridge Road to the north, there's like a 50-foot buffer of trees. Right, so they're already naturally screened in.
And to the west is all the ORV part. So,
Mhm.
and if you look at the parcel that the township has outlined in black, to the north of that is really Bedrock's property that he bought from us years ago that's going to be developed in a similar manner to what we're doing. And I don't know, I guess I hadn't thought of this until just now when you mentioned it, but maybe that needs to be excluded too, because Barry has been very upfront about this, saying that I want to do whatever you guys are doing in concert with it. And frankly, he's paid for the first couple engineering drawings for us. Every time I ask him for that, it's $5,000 a whack, okay? So if he's going to be consistent with what we have, we probably could, and his property is completely surrounded by the backside of consumers, our property, it's in the black box, and the ORV park on the north, and the mining property he has on the west. So I can't think of a better place to have some industrial use and outside storage than where it's isolated from everybody else.
Is instead of making, I agree with changing the existing industrial because it is zoned industrial. Is the 40 acres of property that you own or the township own, is that zoned industrial right now?
No, we haven't even changed the zoning on it yet. We're gonna have.
Okay, so if somebody, and even if it's somebody else in this blue area decided to go industrial and change their zoning, would they at that time be able to change their zoning and then ask for not to participate in the Dixie overlay?
Well, to
Is
get
that
a
part of the
zoning
process?
change, they have to come before you first. And
Correct.
make a case for whether or not you should even change that zone. If they did that, then whether or not they ask for something else, like outside storage, that's another issue.
Sure.
That you'd have to decide at that point in time whether or not it was part of the overlay or not. I'm just trying to figure out how we get this thing started so that it doesn't. Everything we've done on this has taken enormously longer than I ever expected. Okay, and we have people that are kind of salivating, I think, to get started in this property, and I don't want to turn them off. And if we secure the first tenant that we're working on now, is going to be great for the township. So that's what it is, but if they were somewhere else in here and they wanted to change it to industrial, they got to come to you and make a case for whether or not you want industrial. And typically, what happens in any master plan, the basic principle of planning, and I'm sure Michelle would agree with this, is you usually start out with your most intense zoning and you start to step down the intensity. So you go from industrials down to commercials, down eventually to residential, so that there's always some kind of a buffer around. So if somebody were to come along and say, I got a piece of residential property or commercial property and I want to make it industrial, you would be within your rights to say, I don't know if we want to do that where you are, you know, and then whatever conditions, but we need some way to get this done. And I guess the discussions well founded, because I hadn't even thought of it. Barry had said from the beginning, whatever you're doing, I want to be a part of and make it complementary to it. And so he's been doing that all along, and I would assume if we do it, he'd do it, because when somebody looks at our property, the preliminary drawings actually have detail into his part of the property as well, what he's going to do with it.
Just a little background about Barry. When he built that hazardous waste, whatever, what's it called that he built on Grange Hall?
Oh, maybe.
Mavis.
That's
When
not
he,
hazardous waste.
well, I know, but it's
Catastrophic disaster.
That's what I wanted.
There's a big difference.
he came up with a plan. He built it for us. And when he brought the plans to Bob, Bob looked at it and says, you can build it for that price? You can build it for that price? He says, yep, I can. And he did.
Well, actually, what
He is
happened is
fantastic.
he said he would build the building to the specs that the task force needed. That building was made to meet their requirements, okay? And when he got done, he realized, because we have no city water, right? And you can't have a 12,000 square foot building without a sprinkler system. And Mavis wouldn't move in under the county rules without a sprinkler system in there for the $6 million worth of equipment that's in there. And that actually ended up costing him about another $350,000. So, but he did it, and he said, I said I'd do it, and I did it.
Mhm.
And that's because the pump for it is about 100 or 150,000 bucks. I think there's really only one company in California that makes almost all of them that can pump the volume of water for a sprinkler system. So yeah, that's a big piece of getting the sprinkler system into a building. You have, if a building, there's a lot of buildings around. There are 11,999 square feet. Okay. Because when it's 12,000, it gets sprinklered unless you firewall suppress sections of it and stuff. And in the case of Mavis, it's, as you know, it's pretty much one big building with a little tiny office in the front.
Has anybody, have you guys seen that building, gone in it? It's really kind of neat.
I've never been in.
It's really kind of neat when they
If you want to go
dedicated it.
sometime, tell me, I'll call the guy that runs it on a day-to-day basis. There's only usually 1 or 2 people in there, but I'm sure they take you through it. They had kind of an open house when we first opened it, and a bunch of people showed up for that, and Ruth was there, a whole bunch of people. And,
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
give me a call. So,
So if the planning commission is okay with modifying the boundaries, then by the next meeting in your packet, you'll have what we come up with, you know, which properties will be removed, and that will be the map that we approve at the public hearing.
So you're gonna add in Barry Bass's property?
I think we should, the 40 acres there. It's 43, whatever it is, it's attached to it. Again, it is the most isolated property they're going to get from anybody in the whole township.
Yeah.
That wasn't by accident. I mean, we kind of kept most of that stuff out. I think there's 2 or 3 other pieces of industrial property in the whole township.
So it doesn't matter that it's right, Barry's at 40 acres. It's right off of Great Hall.
It's not, the only piece of Barry's 40 acres that's off of Grange Hall.
Oh, back
It's
by,
the little tiny part that comes out over that wetlands pond that's ponded water by the power line. And I don't know if you can even do anything with it, because you'd have to drain the wetlands and fill it in, and it'd probably take a month of Sundays to get done.
so Quick Creek, compared to Quick Creek, Barry owns around it, and then
Yep.
what else?
And that
this piece here, minus that little cutout for Tri-City Aggregates, that trapezoid, that's Berries, along with the part that comes out here next to Consumers, which is where the pond and water is setting. I think where it's setting. And then he owns where Gibraltar is, except for the 6 acres that the Gibraltar plant, excuse me. is setting.
You want to remove those. Right, that's what you're saying.
From the overlay.
Yeah, I would take, yeah, this piece here, this, I can outline that for you. It's really
Yeah.
very-
We just need the properties. Okay.
And you're right, we're gonna have to actually put a zoning on the township property. I think it's all technically zoned E1 from 1950s, when the Buffalo Brothers farm got used for the gravel to build the viaducts on I-75. So it's one of the original gravel pits, actually zoned E1 extracted, not on a consent decree. But I mean, we put Mavis on there, haven't even split the 2.5 off for that.
Okay. I guess just to summarize, at least for my purposes, the discovery of the, if it was an error or what it was, inadvertence, has led to what sounds to be removing at least 2 parcels from the requirements of the overlay district, which is pending approval now before the, or it's awaiting public hearing before the township
So
board.
there's actually more than 2. I think you got 3.
There's gonna be
parked, right?
several, but it's 2 main areas. that
Yeah,
you're
2 main areas.
Right, and and again, just to recap what you had said earlier, if there are future landowner interests that kind of seek a similar waiver or exemption, that would come before us as a commission for consideration.
Or rezoning, if they request to rezone their property.
Okay. Because it seems that there could be others if there's certain
But what we're
properties that are
changing it right
treated.
now, what we're changing it to right now, it's gonna go before, it's gonna be a public hearing at a planning commission meeting.
Okay,
It'll be a public hearing and then you guys can approve to, request to approve to the township board, right?
Yes.
Request to approve it and then that stays. So if it's in the overlay, it's in the overlay. You'd have to come before the board again for a variance.
Yeah, I mean, the overlay kind of works like as like a zone on top of the zone. So like any request to change zoning will come through you. And we're actually working on this right now in the zoning ordinance. Like we're gonna have criteria of, so that you have criteria in front of you of what to base a rezoning on. So it's gonna be like, is it compatible with it, you know, its surroundings? There's gonna be things for you to look at to make that decision. And if they don't meet those criteria, then they can't do it. They don't have discretion.
I'm glad that you're concerned about those issues, but think about it. Where else could you put something like that in Groveland Township that's surrounded by a bunch of old mining sites?
True.
There isn't.
yeah,
They're all surrounded by residential for the most part on the other ones.
it's a point well taken, Bob. I don't know, from a kind of a visceral sense, I feel like we're standing at the cusp of approval of a process that's been ongoing for a long time. And if we're gonna do it correctly, I'm just always in favor of that. So there's really nothing for us to approve tonight. That's correct. It's just more or less informational for purposes of next meeting.
And
Okay.
you'll have the new boundaries in your packet to look at.
All right, very good. And if there's a public hearing that will take place, then there will be notification to the property interests that could be affected by the overlay.
There's a 300-foot notice, right? Don't you do that?
Yes.
No, I don't do that. for
I don't
overlay,
think you
do I?
need to do that. No, it'll be published like any public hearing
Okay,
without. It's not- In certain cases, the state requires, like, if you're rezoning a property, everyone within 300 feet, you have to notify, but for an overlay, you don't have to do that.
okay. Any other comments or questions from anyone? No? Okay, thank you, Michelle. Moving on to new business. The first item on our agenda is for the ORV special use update. And I understand we have some folks present tonight from the Oakland County Parks and Rec.
Yep.
Correct?
I can start. My name is Zach Crane. I'm with Oakland County Parks and Rec. Yeah, so this is just an update to complete our site plan process for as it relates to the non-conforming parking lot at the ORV park. As you know, we're currently leasing the property from the state to operate the park, and we're responsible for all the development. So we completed some phase 1 work last year on the berm creation, some interior drainage issues within the parking lot. And then as part of this year, we're going to do some updated overlays to the berm along Dixie Highway. I think there's a rendering should be in your packet to kind of see that visual. Address the monument silence on the corner of Shields and Dixie Highway. So, and then just to note too, we have there should be a letter attached in there from the DNR just as it relates to their support for the current parking lot and design standards as it is today.
Thank you. And your name is Zach Crane. The other two individuals who are here tonight.
Hi, I'm Melissa Cross. I'm the manager of the park system.
Okay.
And I'm Mike Down, Chief of Parks Facilities Maintenance and Development.
Okay. Thank you all for coming and for the materials. I've reviewed them. It seems fairly straightforward, especially, in consideration of the letter of support from the DNR. I understand that this is a state-owned property. And I guess just with regard to the letter that was authored by you, Mike, I would ask the other members of the commission if you had any thoughts or feedback on that. And as I read it, that's just kind of a summary, if you will, of improvements or updates that have been put in place for the coming season 2022.
Correct.
Which, again, they seem fairly straightforward with the planning of improvements, the planning of the pines and the aesthetic improvements along Dixie Highway. And then the second element in your letter would be the relocation of the monument sign, just to comport with the road commission setback requirements right of way. And then I do understand with regard to the parking surface, the Dixie overlay has a requirement that's set forth with regard to hard surfaces, paved surfaces. But I understand there's a proposal, an alternative, if you will, that the DNR has signed off on. They believe that's sufficient, correct?
The asphalt milling is correct.
Asphalt millings.
Yep.
And I'll say, I mean, as we just discussed, the Dixie Highway overlay has not been approved yet, so that requirement technically does not apply. And I take the point here that the DNR, supports pervious surfaces on their property, so I think that makes perfect sense.
Correct.
Yeah.
Bob?
Mr. Chair, just so for historical benefit for everybody else, when I was there and they would make the changes to the Groveland Oaks Park, they've always been very good stewards about saying, here's what we're doing. But actually the park and the ORV park are kind of like part of Michigan or part of Oakland County. So we really don't have the same latitude to do it, but they've always been very good about telling us what's going on here, letting you know. And in the ORV park, I think what it would be beneficial to do is, my concern has been that when they started the berm, they kind of left it. And I said, it actually looks worse now than when it was a mining site.
Well, I look forward to the new renovations because at first you put the fence up and you could see through, and periodically you get peeks,
Yeah.
sights of what's going on. Then all of a sudden that dirt came and I'm like, well, shoot, why'd they bother putting the fence up then?
Because it turned out part of what they were doing was to suppress some noise complaints we had at the beginning, which have been fixed now. They were starting to build the berm and then the fall came and they stopped working on it. So my discussion, and they've been very good about coming with us, 'cause remember, Mike lives in our township.
You want me to tell them what place?
It looks like heck right now. You need to finish the berm and landscape it, so it looks like something. And really, once we get that done, I don't know why I don't care what they do inside the park. If they move features or add features, that's just the day-to-day running the park. I don't think you or us need to be involved in that day-to-day administration any more than we are when you're doing small stuff at Groveland Oaks. If there's anybody that takes care of their park property, I think it's the state and the county. So we need to get it so that what our residents see driving down Dixie doesn't look like an abandoned mining site, but looks like something finished. And by the way, you owe us a quilt on the sign. Okay, you can ask John. Okay, it's at least the red and white Dixie one. Okay.
And just to add to it, we will be coming in the next couple of months. We're planning to bring a report to you on what our operations, what our first year operations was like to us. We've learned quite a few things, quite a road of hard knocks in some respects, but you know, we're adjusting with everything. You know, you just learn from those lessons and try to improve upon those things that we're doing at the park operation. So Melissa and John, I believe, will be coming and make that presentation. Or
Yeah, whenever Bob tells us, we're giving a full update to our Parks and Recreation Commission next week. So once they've had that presentation, I'll probably bring the same one to you guys, let you know what's going on.
They've been very good about trying to keep us in the loop. And I have to say, when we had the noise complaints, Sue, I think she retired now. Right?
Yep.
But she fixed it before she left. You know, they got on it and worked with the residents, and I think they did a very good job of fixing that. They have been responsive in that. We just need to get it so it looks right for our Dixie byway. And I think that they will take care of the rest. And I can tell you that John in particular has always been very supportive and has given me a complete list of all the, or you said the list of candidates of everybody. Now, after I talked to John, I had to say, wow, I don't recognize a lot of these names. He said that's because a lot of them are done through third parties. So
Marketing firms, yeah.
you're kind of sorting and dividing that up. And he's been sharing that information. And I actually suggested that as we get ready to move into promoting our property, it might be beneficial to have what they're doing to promote the park tied into some sort of a introductory video on the park and what the township's offering next door to it, because I think we're appealing to in large part the same people. And it would just make a stronger comparison for both, because a lot of the people that use that park have very specific interests other than Joe Dokes in the public who wants to go there and ride. That's why they lease the park out to a lot of different companies. And when you eventually see who all of those are, I think you'll see that it's a great opportunity for us. And the more we can piggyback on each other, because the state and the economic development people want to help them. And we set aside some revenue in our budget for this year to be able to develop it. I think we can make a first class marketing pitch for it that will benefit both of us going forward. And they've been very helpful on all of that.
No, I would say the spirit of cooperation is evident in, you know, the submissions. It's really a novel attraction, in my view, at least. It seems to be kind of something that could really catch on. I know it's early. I understand. I don't know if it was you, Mike, or if it was put in the DNR letter just regarding the growing pains, and you know, it's kind of in the early stages, so we get that. But I guess on behalf of the commission, the cooperation and the awareness, if you will, of the you know, the local subtleties. I don't know what the best word is, but thank you for that. And I guess with
It's
that,
subtleties unless there's complaints coming in.
subtleties is a neutral word, correct? So if there's any
I
other
have a
thoughts or
question.
questions, yeah. Lynn?
Looking at one of these, one entrance is off Shields Road and this one's off Dixie Highway. Which one are you looking at?
So you want me to answer that? Okay.
Yes, Junior.
So the going into this site plan 2 years ago, our main entrance during operations was coming off of Mount Hop, or using Mount Holly's entrance as our main park entrance. And over the year, we learned the actual occupancy doesn't require that amount of stacking or that amount of parking. So this year, we're going to be operationally coming off of Shields Road. So some of these lessons and growing pains is what we're looking at. We're still keeping the Mount Holly as an option for events, larger events. The last thing we want to happen is what you talked about earlier in the meeting with all of the backwards on Dixie Highway with the Renaissance Festival. And that's one of the reasons why the state and the county entered into negotiations with Mount Holly to use their parking lot in the off season for the ORV. They
Okay.
put it, Mount Holly, or state invested approximately 150 million or 150,000, not million, 150,000.
Good line, how much you got?
Yeah, 150,000 in a row between the parking lot and our park, so that they can get access between that. So we're gonna be still utilizing it, still, hence still part of our site plan for approval tonight too as well. So
Thank you, sir.
no problem. Peach.
Jim?
A little slow tonight. Is this the expectation that this will be done in this year?
Yes.
To mimic this?
We have 63 trees coming. We're gonna be doing the grass restoration. We're gonna be doing the earthwork right now, that tall mound of peaked earthwork that looks so unsightly. It'll be rounded off according to specs, meet slopes and stuff like that. So it's not be quite as high as what it is today, but it'll be rounded off and then it'll be restored and grasses and trees.
Some of my neighbors have asked, so I just wanted to double check. Thanks.
Does anyone, any commission members who have questions or concerns with regard to the millings? No? Okay. Will we be opening it up
So
for,
are you guys suggesting that we eliminate the special use and just have it?
Full site plan approval is
just
what
site
we're
plan?
requesting
Okay,
to complete the process that we started 2 years ago.
so basically you need a motion to approve that we are eliminating the special use permit, that they are abiding by Michigan state guidelines, and that's who they have to abide by. And that the site plan that they presented last year with had the millings in it is what you're approving.
Can you reiterate that?
Nice little motion.
If I say I make a motion, can you say it?
You're gonna make a motion to
Approve.
approve the step usage of the special use permit and approve the site plan as it was stated back in 2021.
2020.
It's the
2020,
same, the same
2020.
site plan submitted 2 years ago as the one you have here.
Yes, so everything stayed except for the berm will look much more beautiful. Absolutely. We don't have to put that in motion.
Can I make that motion that you just
Yes. yes.
reiterated?
And I'll be happy to second it. So eloquently said.
so at this point, we put it up for vote or,
We're gonna do a roll call vote. How about that?
Right.
okay. Roll call vote would be,
Me, she did my paper.
okay.
Okay, so roll call to vote, Jeff Penzine,
I would approve.
Neil's not here, David Newville,
Yes.
Lynn Shank,
Yes, ma'am.
Jenny McKay,
Approve.
Jim Christopher.
Yes.
Do you have a colored man?
Okay.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
all in favor and motion carried.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you for the
Thank you.
assistance.
Look forward to seeing you.
And thank you, folks, for coming and for the diligence and, helping us out. It's appreciated very much.
If anybody wants to know where he lives, I know where he lives.
I'm sticking around the hunches, so I'll listen to the rest of you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zach.
Crane, yep, Zach Crane, thank you.
Thank you,
Hi,
Zach.
Zach.
Yeah, he is.
All right, on to the next item on the agenda, new business sub B. This would be for State Electric Warehouse site plan approval. We have somebody from State Electric here tonight. Introduce yourself again.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dwayne Vogelsall. I'm the owner of State Electric.
Okay, thank you, Dwayne. Thanks for coming.
I'm new to this kind of stuff.
So it's Jeff.
Be patient with me.
You've already ingratiated yourself to me. Thank you. Yeah, I'm right there with you. So, okay, included with the packet of information for the meeting tonight was a series of documents regarding approval of a site plan proposal, or I guess just a conceptual rendering at this phase. Is that correct? Correct? Okay. Michelle, is this where I
Hand off
turn
to me.
it over to you? Thank you.
Sure. So I did the planning review and Tim the engineer did the engineering review. So I will just give a summary of what we found. So this is the area we were just talking about on Big Sky Drive. This parcel is zoned I2, and the applicant Wayne wants to put a 6,000 square foot warehouse on the property. So it is pretty straightforward here. If you have the site plans, just so there's no confusion, there's nothing on the site right now. It's completely vacant. It's the 6,000 square feet is what they're proposing, and then in the future they've made, you know, arrangements for an additional 6,000 square feet side by side. So along, I don't know, the near future, you're hoping for 12,000 square feet. Yeah. So I went through it, and the major outstanding issues that we want to talk about here are at the end of my report. And the first one has been taken care of. A sealed copy of the plan has come in. But there's a few other things here to talk about. So I think one of the bigger ones here with the site design is that the requirement in I2 is for the parking to be in the rear. And it's currently, if I could just pull on the page. And there's currently, I believe, 9 parking spots that are in the front of the site. So that's going to take, you know, some rearranging for the architect and engineer to resubmit. Yeah, sure.
Yes. I gotcha. Take it away.
Well, I own the first 2 buildings on Big Sky as well. And that all has front parking. But it's not I2.
Well, that was done by
Okay.
So, and the zoning ordinance may have been different then.
Okay.
When did you build those other properties?
04, 06.
Yeah, I'm not sure why, and it could be because they're I1.
Okay.
So I only looked at the requirements for your zone, I2.
Okay.
So that those should be in the back. I think myself and the engineer were curious about, you know, circulation isn't super clear what the plan is for, you know, entering and leaving the property. There is noted on here. Sure, I believe on the writing here on the right side, it says there's no dumpster, but then some of the site plans, there is a dumpster. Oh, these are all the
Yeah, those are just
okay, so we'll want to talk about the dumpster, and then the major outstanding things are we need a photometric plan that shows the type of lighting, where it will, and the level of illumination. And then if you're planning to put any signs on the property, they just need to follow the sign requirements.
Okay.
And then on top of those, you know, the engineer's report came back with, there was, you know, little to no information that he needs to review at this time. So, like I said, the building design is very straightforward. It's a rectangle, but there are just the outstanding issues here, modifying the parking, parking and curbing, clarification on the dumpster, circulation signs. And lighting. But we can go through those more if you have, any of the planning commissioners have questions. Or you want to talk about your property.
I don't know what to say, ask me a question.
Well, I guess first and foremost, Dwayne, you were provided a copy of Michelle's assessment of February 15th. So you've seen it and
Yeah, the best of it.
okay. Well, did you have comments or?
No, I'm sure you are going to have some questions. Well, the whole thing right now, I think is kind of preliminary, right, to make sure that we're all on the same page before I got too deep in with an architect and engineer to do something wrong, because it's very expensive.
Right.
And I don't want to do the design incorrectly, so kind of came up with a basic.
So was State Electric, that was the property that led to the discovery of the anomaly with the overlay? Okay, so your one of your properties is on
So I own the first two buildings already currently there. I think, so when you come down,
Gotcha.
there's two multi-tenants.
okay,
This whole thing happened over the course of 7-8 years. So I put a shop in there. And as we've grown, we found that we've outgrown the facility that I currently have. So, unbeknownst to me, I put some storage containers in the back, painted them the same color as the building. They looked fine until we realized that there's a wire reel, started stacking some stuff up on the top, and it started to look unsightly. When you look at it every day, you don't realize how unsightly it is compared to someone driving up the road. So this whole thing was cleared up, right? So I said, well, I own those 3 lots down the road. I would build a building over there. Well, then we started going in this direction. All of a sudden, oh, didn't you know this overlay district? Well, overlay district. Now you did, right? So now we know, so
And
I need to put something.
if I might, add, in a bizarre set of circumstances, the problems that came about helped us uncover the anomaly about the outside storage, or we still wouldn't have known it. And I've been going on selling these lots to people potentially and not realizing we had a real potential job site.
right. So
So
actually,
it's kind of, it's helped fix it, right? It's not uncommon. If you look at a lot of the ordinances, I tell people, when you want to know how ordinances get written, most of them are because something comes up that nobody ever thought of at the time. And all of a sudden it seems important, and that's where we write it. The best one I can think of is when I first started on the planning commission. I was sitting where you were. I think I was there about 2 months, and somebody had a bunch of horses on the end of Groveland Road with no house. And the guy that owned them decided, I don't think I want to feed them anymore, so he just left. And they had no water. So it was like a week or so later, all the horses dropped dead. And Don had to make arrangements to get the carcasses carted out of there and came in. We need an ordinance right now. You cannot have livestock unless you got a house first so that they take care of them. And that's how it got written. And that's what happens in many cases. The blue garage on the side of that house on Grange Hall is another one. Somebody will figure out some way to do something many times that you think, why would anybody do that? But somebody will.
About the one that's the wrong color.
Yeah, he thinks it's great.
I'm gonna tell you, I gotta tell you this story. You have to hear this.
But that's how we get some of the ordinances written, so that doesn't happen. We had a person wants to put a stockade fence on M15 in front of their house, right up by the road right away. Completely blocked the view of the house. And people started complaining, it looks like heck driving down M15.
Yep.
And it did. So we wrote another ordinance. You gotta have decorative fences in the front, not stockade fence like you'd have in an impound yard, right? Now, the only good thing was the guy sold the house and the next guy that moved in said, I think this looks like hell, and ripped it all down. Okay, but we wrote the ordinance, so it didn't happen. That is how they get done. And in this case here, I have to admit that Dwayne's interest in trying to use his other parcels has led to us realizing we need to do some tweaking on the master plan overlay district. So that's really what it is.
and I'm sure that happens, right? I guess it's fortuitous for you though, Mr. Lobosal, because this was discovered now, so you're not coming to us and asking for,
Figured it out. I didn't
right?
know.
So timing is everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, I'm gonna give you a plug here. he is gonna probably become, if he isn't already, the foremost installer for these electric vehicle charging stations.
Hmm.
And so a
Really?
few of them are gonna go in on the parking lot up here in the building he bought across from the fire station. I think these are the kinds of businesses and applications that we want to encourage in Groveland Township. I don't want to get on something that's on the tail end of development, waiting for it to become a dead duck. I want to have people that are on the beginning edge of that and able to grow the applications and hopefully over time provide jobs to some people. That's, a lot of people say my kids move because there's no jobs here, right? We want to be able to fix some of that, and we want a tax base of good viable candidates. And I think his business has got that going for him.
So I will tell you a little bit about myself. I've been an electrician for 35 years. I live in Orton. All my children, I have 5 children. I'm from Troy, Richmond. That, we're all going through this crazy time. COVID. It's just chaos, right? I walked in a year and a half ago to my office, which is one of those multi-units in Big Sky. I told my team, we need to embrace technology. Whether Dwayne likes electric cars or not is completely irrelevant at this point. It's coming like a freight train. It's coming fast. If you don't see the light coming, you need to get some new glasses, So I have entrenched myself 100% into EV charger infrastructure, EV charger distribution. I say EV electric vehicle. How do I do that? Sitting on a couch. Mary Bear, I must have an email address. That kind of stuff. Send out emails, General Motors response. Next thing you know, we're on General Motors. If you look up on the website, it's called Chevrolet My Way. That's my brother installing an EV charger at one of the vice president's homes in Northville. It's just kind of snowballed like that. Next thing you know, there's a company called Enel, which is a $100 billion a year company out of Rome, Italy. They're the energy provider for all of Europe. They have a division in the US called Enel X. Well, they sell a product called Juice Box. Juice Box is a very well-known car charger, along with ChargePoint. Now that I say Juice Box, you'll probably start seeing them around. There's other brands too. So we're the largest channel partner for distribution. So we distribute, we do installations. Before the Chevrolet Bolt was recalled, we were doing 30 of a week. And help is another problem. Can't find good help. So I started hiring. I reached out to my kids, they're in their 20s now. Hey, some of these children grew up around here, they're pretty mechanical, they're pretty savvy, get some engineers on board, kids that grew up in Groveland, Brandon, Holly, so on and so forth. Put together a U.S. Department of Labor accredited apprenticeship program, teach, train, assist, build up the younger generation. And as we've kind of morphed into this, kind of run out of space, hence I'm standing before you to say, we need to build another building and grow into this.
Yeah, sounds like a good thing.
I hope.
Yeah. No, kudos
If
to-
it goes down.
You guys gonna have a lot of charging stations for sale, right?
Yeah, we got a lot of chargers.
No, kudos to you for
Thank
your
you.
proactivity and your, ingenuitive
Yeah, and
thinking.
I bought the building across from River Rock, so that's our headquarters.
The old long building where the
Yes.
Secretary of State's office used to be.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I did that.
Okay.
You can-
Any,
Well, that's, is it May or June?
NMA or
He's gonna have a big PR event, so you know, for the charging stations he's putting up there, and a bunch of big wigs coming in to do a full court press on the release of what he's doing for these charging
And for
stations.
education of the
Yeah.
consumer, so I have.
The whole thing, it's just a good PR spin. I think our township needs that kind of good spin, okay? That's who we want to have come here. I don't want to have the guy that says, yeah, I paint stripes on the road or something. I want the guy that's actually lead the technology.
So we're excited. We're all putting out.
yeah, no, it's hard to disagree with that logic, I will say, personally.
How much outside storage are you looking at?
So-
Because I'm looking at this and I think it's pretty flat land.
It's flatter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
so front and the back with some ditches for drainage and this big retention pond. So, listen, I'm an electrical contractor. I'm construction guy, really. Face it. I always use an analogy. You need to break eggs to make a cake. You can't build a building without making a mess.
True.
Okay, you have to be able to have certain things that don't warrant putting in a building and eating. It might be a trenching machine, it might be a small trailer, it might be a pickup truck, it might be, you name it, some pipe, conduit, wire, things that have to be put in the ground, have to be utilized. Are they sightly? Not always, right? But they exist. Everybody conveniently drives around, they never really realize what all the stuff, how it all came to be. So without making a complete disaster out of things, there's opportunity that I need to put things in a yard, either some storage containers that are painted or screen printed, maybe trees on them, whatever. I don't want to look at junk either. I want to make it nice because it takes the value out of the property. And if I was a neighbor, I wouldn't want to look at it as well. But generally speaking, I don't think anything won't look like it's a place again. Concrete placement. Wouldn't be that big even,
And like we were talking about earlier, so you can see on the site plan in the back, piece, designated storage area. And so that's one of the issues that we talk about here in the planning report that I did, is that along the whole bridge here, there is about 50 feet of trees, and he is surrounded by other industrial properties, which he also owns. So the zoning ordinance does give you the discretion to sort of waive other screening devices that we usually require, like a wall or, planting your own trees. Those already exist. So I did write in this memo that I think that this area is fine because it's naturally screened, and also around. It's not really around any residential uses. So I think that the outdoor storage should not be a problem.
Well, again, it butts up against residential.
On the other side.
Right, right.
Yes, but between, I mean,
Isn't the
so we
pond
have.
the swan? I used to raise swans, ponds right
Yeah,
across,
that's
right?
right.
The one that
we have-
Star Rock used to blow up was.
Yes, yes.
That's just across the street.
Okay.
I don't think the old man's still alive, but that house.
Yeah, he used to have swans.
Is he? Okay. He doesn't have
I
swans.
just
in there,
cleaned his
right?
pond for him with the machine.
Okay.
So,
But he doesn't have
Unless he
swans in
died.
it anymore. I think.
no, there was no swans.
But other than that, he meets all of the setback requirements. The screening for the outdoor storage is fine. It's really just an issue of moving the parking to the back, explaining more about the egress points and circulation on the site. They're things that I think that we can certainly figure out. And so I would say, the only other thing to talk about is the engineering report, which Tim has found is not in substantial compliance, but that's largely because of the preliminary phase and didn't provide anything. So I would say from the planning side, that it could be approved with the condition that it meets these modifications that I have here in the report, and that Dwayne, Danielle, the engineer, Bob, and I will get all of that squared away. And if there were any other like major adjustments he had to make to meet the ordinance, it would come back to you, but otherwise we would handle it administratively.
Any other questions? Anyone? Comments? Michelle, thank you. Go
The
ahead,
two
David.
buildings, you're gonna put up the current one that you're gonna put up right away, and the second one, are those gonna be connected? Okay, that's what it looked like.
Firewall, they're not firewall, they got a sprinkler,
Firewall.
or maybe one a foot smaller.
Michelle, if I could just direct this to you. Just with regard to circulation, could you expound on that a bit? Just
Sure.
what do you mean?
What we mean by that is like, where are the entry and exit points going to be? Please also show us that it's going to be paved with the material, where the road on the site goes, so that we know it's wide enough for a truck that you might need for loading and unloading, so that we can see when the cars that are in the parking lot are backing out, that they have enough room, like, just to make sure that it's safe and meets other requirements for how the road and entry and exit onto the site.
Ingress,
And that's termed a modification on your report. So is there something that you've identified as
Yeah.
not in conformity with the ordinance?
Yeah, so I said modification because he did show here that like one egress and ingress. So it exists, it just needs to be changed, whereas the things that say outstanding documentation weren't submitted at all.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
And that,
I mean,
So what I have is this and then another very similar. Yeah, so he did submit, but I think that and I'll have to double check all of it, but there are certain requirements about how wide this can be. And that it has to be at least 25 feet from other parcels. So there are things that I'd have to figure out once he modifies that.
so it's a process
Yeah.
and we're, I guess, going to, take a vote on advancing the process forward at this stage. This is, again, just a phase approval. It's not a final approval. Yes.
Well, it's approval with conditions, but like I said, if nothing changes, if they're not major changes, it's not going to come back to you. So in some sense, it's your blessing.
Okay.
You're saying as long as you meet the conditions, it doesn't have to come back to us, and we'll figure the rest of it.
And even in the absence of the engineering report or evaluation.
So the reason why he stated this is because Dwayne didn't have much to give for engineering, and he basically said deny. I don't really know why he said denial to be really.
Well, he just said not in substantial compliance, and that's because Dwayne didn't submit. So once Dwayne submits, then he will redo this report. And like I said, if there's major reasons of concern, that we would bring it back to you.
Okay. Anyone have an issue with that or?
So he just has to go down the list and take care of all the things the engineers
Yes,
said, I don't have enough information.
yeah, it's just very preliminary at this point.
so you'll do it internally. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'll do the planning side.
Are you wanting to be a part of the construction
No, I'm
site plan?
I could be wrong in this thinking, but if the engineer has issues, major or otherwise, you would bring those back to us for consideration.
Well, Tim would speak on behalf because it's more technical than I
It
could
would-
speak to, but yeah, it would come back to the planning commission.
I don't know, I guess I just feel like it would, if his report and assessment would have a bearing upon our recommendation is, would we need that or not?
But if he comes back and says, I need X, Y, and Z,
He
you're
has
gonna go
said,
back to Tim and he's gonna go to Dwayne and say, you gotta give me X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, so that's what his
Before it
report,
gets
his
done.
report is saying the same thing as mine, you need to do this, 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 and this. And so then what we're saying is then we can work that out with just Dwayne instead of bringing. it
Okay.
back.
That's what I'm inartfully asking, I suppose. It's just the process ensures that if Tim identifies issues, or yourself for that matter, unless those are major concerns, there would be no issues for us to move this forward tonight.
Yeah, as long as you say approval with the conditions.
With
that
conditions,
the
correct.
Engineering and planning report criteria are met.
Understood.
Like that.
Okay. Everyone's fine with that?
Yeah, Jeff, in maybe different terms, the way it is set up here is that those concerns will be bantered back and forth among, let's say, the three entities, the township, Dwayne, and our engineering and planning consultant.
Correct.
And unless there's something they can't resolve among the four of them, we wouldn't see it again. and we could be assured that it's going to go forward the way that we want it to.
Thank you,
We've
Mr.
done it in the
Pfister.
past. So,
Okay, yeah, thank you. That understood.
Okay.
No, it makes sense. So with that helpful explanation, I guess, do we open it
You
up
can
for
make
a motion?
to approve the conceptual site plan for State Electric with the conditions as stated in the OHM report and the Beckett and Rader reports.
I move what she said.
I second the motion.
Sorry about that.
And would,
We'll get better.
so Danielle, this would not require a roll call vote, correct?
I would roll call it.
I would.
Just because it's a big issue.
Agree.
Did you get my motion down, all of it?
I got your motion. I don't remember what the heck I said, but I'll remember it. And David, you did this second, right?
Okay,
Okay, so roll call the vote. Dave Newville,
Yes.
Lynn Shank,
Yes, ma'am.
Jenny McKay,
Yes.
Jim Christopher,
yes,
Jeff Penzine.
yes,
Okay, all in favor, motion carried.
wonderful. Thank you again, Danielle, for your support and assistance. Moving on to, I guess, the next item on the agenda would be the monthly planning report. Back to Michelle, correct?
Okay, let me pull that up. So I'll start with the top story, which is from the federal government. If you all recall, months ago, when we achieved this pandemic, they passed a few different funds, the American Recovery Plan, which is supposed to be diffused down to our state and to our local government. And there's been a lot of back and forth over the months because they initially were quite vague in what it could be used for. And so this money has been kind of tied up in that people don't know how they're allowed to spend it. So the Treasury, the US Treasury finally came out with the final rule of how things can be spent. So is Groveland receiving any ARPA funds?
590 something thousand, of which half of it's been deposited already.
Okay, great. Any big plans?
We ordered one.
EV chargers. We
ordered one ambulance so far, that's about 160,000. And I'm waiting a little bit to see what happens in the final shakedown of the ongoing sewer project, the bids for the new building and another ambulance we still need to get to.
Okay, so I was going to skip down to the second page here, the American Planning Association. So if you recall earlier, I said the Michigan Association of Planning, that's the state chapter. The APA is our national planning organization. And they came out with a 2022 trend report for planners to keep track of 100 trends that are affecting planning. And they categorize them as urgent, so act now, and then trends to prepare for. So act now, are things that we want to be paying close attention to. It's in the climate crisis, digitization, which I thought was interesting, how it impacts access to nature, housing, which is a huge issue nationwide. So that's at the top of their list for planners to be paying attention to. And then we were talking about training earlier. So you can see every month in our report, we list training opportunities throughout the state of Michigan. So we have here Michigan Association planning their annual workshop for officials. There are several in March. If you missed any of the MTA ones, there are several here that are available, covering, zoning administration, planning essentials, capital improvement plans. And I work very closely with the women that run the organization. They do a good job and they're very thorough. It's a good opportunity to meet other people that might be new to planning commissions or ZBAs that have the same questions as you. So I highly recommend those, or I'm sure MTAs are great too. I just have like experience with them.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. That's it. I guess that completes tonight's agenda.
May I make
At this point, Lynn,
can I make a motion that we all adjourn for today? Any seconds?
I second the motion.
Thank you.
approved.
Aye. Anybody
That's
else?
it.
Anybody else?
Aye.
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 Aye.